Hello and welcome to Scribes and Songsters. I'm Veronique Mandel. Last season, we took our show on the road to Gertrude's writing room. Well, we're back in Gertrude's writing room, but in a very different location. Vanessa Shields has moved her wonderful space to the Coach House on the grounds of Willisted Manor. It's a delightful space, and we're delighted to be here. Our guests today are Windsor's Poet Laureate and one of my favorite singer-songwriters who has a special place in my heart since she comes from the east coast of Canada. We'll meet her shortly and hear her music, but first, let's talk poetry. Windsor's Mary Ann Mulhern is a well-known local poet who has published a number of poetry collections, including The Red Dress, When Angels Weep, and Brides in Black, to name just a few. In 2019, Mary Ann was appointed Windsor's Poet Laureate. Mary Ann is with us today to discuss her latest book, All the Words Between. Mary Ann, welcome to Scribes and Songsters.
Thanks, Veronique. I'm happy to be here.
Oh, thank you. I've been looking forward to this.
Me too.
And it's pretty exciting, I would say, to become the Poet Laureate.
It's a great honor.
Did you ever think that you would be a Poet Laureate?
Never, never, no. I'm still surprised by it, actually.
Shortly, I'd like to talk to you about the kinds of things you do as a Poet Laureate. But take us back, because people who know your work or know you know that you were a nun.
Yes, I was for 8 years. My 20s, gone.
That sounded so final.
Well, it was a very interesting 8 years, and it never occurred to me that it was really all that interesting until I met Marty Gervais. And I had won a slight prize, the Freedom Festival Poetry Prize, and Marty noticed it. So he contacted me and said, think we should maybe get together. Okay, he says, I don't know anything about you. Tell me something about your background. I said, well, I was in a convent. But first of all, I grew up, my parents were Irish immigrants. I grew up in a cemetery house because my father was the caretaker and the grave digger. And then I finished high school, became a teacher, and went into a convent.
Why? I mean, I know, were you a Catholic girl, very, very sort of Catholic girl?
I guess I was.
Yeah.
I guess I was at
because
the time.
There was a thing that Catholic parents had, every family had to have one for God, right?
Yeah, that wasn't my family, but that's true. The Irish in particular. But no, that wasn't true in my case, but I did go into the convent. I was there 8 years.
Did you have a boyfriend before that?
I did.
Oh, yeah?
I did. But we had parted company before this. He went into a seminary for 4 years.
Oh, really?
He got his degree and he went to law school.
Wow, you must have been really good.
So, yeah, too bad. So Marty said he didn't believe. He told me afterwards, I didn't believe one word you said about it. Nothing. That you grew up in a cemetery house and you went into a convent. Yeah. Come on. So he says, okay, if you were in a convent, write about it. I said, oh no, I'm not writing about it. It's too dark and I've chosen to erase it. He said, no, you haven't. Start writing about it. So I went home and started writing and I couldn't stop writing. Yeah. So
why did you leave?
Many, many reasons. At the time in the 60s, they were still so constrained by rules that really, I think, hurt. For example, we were not allowed friendships. You've got a house of 500 women and you're not allowed a friendship.
It's pretty pathetic.
Pathetic. Well, they were terrified of same-sex relationships. They were absolutely terrified of lesbianism. And so they didn't allow anyone to have friends. And they policed that very, very efficiently. So I found it lonely in there, believe it or not. I found it lonely. And after a while, I realized it just wasn't the life for me, that I couldn't go through life without a man. I couldn't go through life without affection. I couldn't go through life without kind of a reality to my life. Yeah. And so there were many good things about the convent that I appreciate now.
What were they?
Well, I think that it was a form of discipline that was probably good for me. And it was just a different way of life. And I think it maybe created in me some of the poetic nature that I have. And so I'm grateful for that. And I met some wonderful people while I was there. I'm still in contact with them.
You know, that attitude not to form friendships. It flies in the face of what you would imagine a religious life would be.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, it really does. But I guess they had this great fear. And so they punished all of us, by saying you cannot have any friends. And yet, ironically, I did form one friendship, and we're still friends.
And so, after that conversation with Marty, was the red dress?
Yeah. Yeah. I brought the first 15 poems, and he said, don't show these to anybody. And I'm bringing the contract next week. This is going to be a book. That which amazed me. But it is, and it sold extremely well, the red dress. And I had an interview with Mary Hines on Tapestry.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Wonderful lady.
Yes, she is.
Yes. So now I have this book, Brides in Black.
Yes.
This seemed to me to be the follow-on of all the things you wrote about in the red dress.
And it actually is.
A lot of poignant stories in here.
Yes. Yes.
How did you meet the women? I guess tell us about it first, and then we'll talk about it.
It's about the aftermath of leaving a convent, and many people experience that. And many of the girls I had taught, I had handled money, I had dated, I had done all of these things.
So you had a bit of a life.
I had a bit of a life,
Yeah.
but a lot of the kids that entered were 14 when they went in, or 12 even. And so they had never dated, they had never handled money, they knew nothing of this world, really. They had never been to a bar.
You know, as I was reading through this, there were some of the stories that made me just want to bawl my heart out.
Yeah.
The missing daughter, this one,
Okay.
it almost broke my heart to read, especially at the end.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. I remember this so well. Yes. He left her in the convent. It wasn't the convent I was in. It was another, believing that, when she was 16, he would come back and take her. But they made her into a nun. And then when he did come back and say, well, where's my daughter? They said, well, she isn't here. Because she had changed her name. She had already taken vows, and she had changed. So they said, validly, I guess, she isn't here. Nobody by that name is here. And so this man walked away, having lost his daughter, and she lost her father forever. So I guess she didn't know that he was going to come back for her. And I found that very sad. It was a group of nuns that told me that. I thought, that's tragic.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It flies in the face of what's really Christian.
Yes. Yes, it does very much.
The other one was instinct, and also never caress a child. Tell us about that.
Oh my, they were adamant about that. I never met my little nieces and nephews until they were 6 or 7. Children were not allowed in the convent, little children. They believed it would spur the mothering instinct. They believed that. So you could never hold a child or pick up a child. And that was, they were adamant about that. So, there were kids that their mothers were still having babies, or their sisters were married and having babies. There's one incident that I still laugh about. One, all letters were read, both coming and going.
Sounds like prison.
Something like but one of the young sisters, her sister who was married wrote a letter and said, I am pregnant, and we're very happy. She never got that letter because the word pregnant was in the letter. And that was something that referred to sexuality.
Right. And God help you if you refer to sexuality.
Yes, yes.
Now, you also talked about in Brides in Black, female bishops.
Well, that would be wonderful. We don't have female priests yet.
No,
Never mind
exactly.
Female bishops. So I guess we have to dream on.
I know. Okay, let's move along to all the words between. Now, this is a compilation.
Yes.
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 So this is, I kept wondering, all this about the cemetery and all these wonderful things you write about the dead.
Yeah.
And it's not at all morbid.
No, not at all. Not at all. When you grew up in a cemetery house and your playground is the cemetery, my brothers and I, the cemetery becomes a very friendly place and a very peaceful place. And that's where we played hide and seek, and that's where we grew up, and it was safe. And read the tombstones, just starting to learn how to read, and I would read the tombstones, and there are messages in tombstones. There are some beautiful messages in them. Mm-hmm. And so it's what I think is beautiful about I love to go to them still. Actually, I went to a Mennonite cemetery up in the Kitchener area a little while ago, and on their tombstones there are two hands joining. Let me join you like that, and it says farewell.
Oh my goodness.
Yes. I think that's absolutely beautiful.
Yes.
That really struck me.
Absolutely.
Yes. Yes.
So now, time is sort of never long enough.
No.
So we must go back to your being the poet laureate.
Oh, yes.
And so you actually get asked to write poetry.
Yes, I do.
So what have you
All
written?
right. Now this is just so fascinating to me. I'm not being a medical person or knowing, but the foundation, a representative of the foundation of the Regional Windsor Hospital, wanted a poem about the new 3D mammography machine, which will be installed in the hospital in January.
Doesn't seem like the stuff of poetry, does it?
No, but they, well, it is in many ways. They're raising funds presently for this very expensive machine. And so they asked me to write a poem, and I was immediately taken with it. Would you like me to read it?
I would love it.
All right.
Let me take this for you.
All right, thank you. It's called Science of Hope. Kathy, a young mother, fears the darkness hidden in her breast. She held her mother in a long, weary winter, too cold for memory. Springtime opened a grave, her mother's name etched in stone. Hope begins with a promise, 3D mammography, a machine programmed to detect, image, identify breast cancer, an ancient enemy illumined in the light, detection early enough for Kathy to walk into the sunshine of each new day. Every morning a gift for Kathy, her family, 3D mammography, a blessing of science, looking to the stars.
It is the stuff of poetry.
It is indeed.
Just lovely.
It is indeed.
So before we go, what are you working on? Because I'm sure you're working on something.
I am. I'm working on, I think, the most exciting project of my entire poetry career. And it's a book of poems that features the tragic Donnelly family of Lucan, Ontario, the family that was murdered in their beds, February 4, 1880. And there's a character or a person, young Bridget Donnelly, the niece that they brought from Ireland. She was murdered that night too. And she's been written out of nearly all the accounts of all the books. And I'm going to feature Bridget, young Bridget Donnelly. And the aftermath of the murders will be Bridget as ghost, when she is at everything, the funeral, the aftermath, the cemetery, she's in Lucan. And I find the whole thing riveting and fascinating, and I can't wait. It's called The Midnight Moon Sings of Murder.
So come back.
Oh, yes.
And tell us about it when it's done.
Thank
you so much.
Thank you so much.
It's been such a pleasure.
Pleasure. Wonderful.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Well, in just a few minutes, we'll hear from Crissi Cochrane. But first, let's listen to her music. Here she is with Something Like Bliss.
It was unexpected. When I met you, everything changed. I've been going through the motions till I first heard your name. Wasted no time, got right to talking. Ooh, you were so lovely. Asked you out on a date downtown, and then I hold feeling something like this, and it's hard to resist this. You between the frames, you're like an oil painting. You with the sunlight in your hair, covering the waterfront. Your voice like music in the air. We both knew this was something special. It was something I had missed, but sure I see deep inside of me to something I didn't know was there. Something like this, feeling like this, feeling something like this, and it's hard to resist this. Something like this, feeling like this, feeling something like this, and it's hard to resist. No, I won't resist this.
Crissi Cochrane is a wonderful singer-songwriter, and you've just heard her, so you know what I'm saying is absolutely true. She's originally from Canada's East Coast, but she has made Windsor her home, and we're very proud she did. Her voice has been described as reminiscent of Billie Holiday or Norah Jones. One of the songs she wrote was heard on the hit television series Nashville, and another of her songs had over 12 million listens on the music streaming service Spotify. We're very pleased to have Crissi here in the studio with us. Welcome to Scribes and Songsters.
Thanks so much for having me.
Now, you're from Nova Scotia. Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in the Annapolis Valley. It's a very rural area. It's along the Bay of Fundy, so it's very scenic and beautiful.
Yes, it is. Were you always singing?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, even when I was really small, we would make these little girl groups. They were very cliquey. We would just sing these really obnoxious songs about boys chasing us on the playground. So, I mean, it's certainly evolved over time. But yeah, in the beginning, I've always loved singing, and I gravitated to the guitar as a kid, really. And I started playing when I was about 9 or 10, and just kind of kept learning little bits over the years, and here I am now.
Did you take lessons? What, no?
No, I sort of got a couple of pointers from my dad, who played just for fun, like at family gatherings and campfires. But most of what I learned was just from the internet, just finding songs that I liked and going online and finding like the guitar tab. It's like a kind of musical notation for guitar, and just sort of self-directed learning.
Wow.
Yeah.
I've been punishing myself trying to learn guitar for a long time.
Oh,
Maybe
yeah.
I should get on the internet.
There's a lot of good videos now. I mean, when I started out, I don't think YouTube was really quite a thing. So now there's a lot of really good tutorials and whatnot.
When did you decide that, did you have other ambitions? Did you sort of, want to be, what did you want to be when you grew up?
I think I always knew that I wanted to be a musician, but there was a practical side of my brain that said that's not really a very reliable job to have. So I thought if I couldn't be a musician, then I wanted to write about musicians. So I really loved Spin magazine, and I wanted to be a music journalist. And I did get a scholarship to go to St. Thomas University in Fredericton. But towards the end of my grade 12 year, I thought, no, I really want to do music. I should try that first. And then if it doesn't work, I'll go back to school.
Yeah.
And I haven't gone back to school.
What did your parents think about you wanting that as a career?
Well, I think they were the practical voice in my head. That was where that came from. They would have been much happier if I had have gone to school and, done that route. But funny enough, when I did go out on my own, I moved to Halifax. My parents actually moved to New Brunswick. That was kind of the split of things, that I could have gone with them to New Brunswick and done journalism, but I thought I'll go to Halifax. And in our, absence from one another, my parents actually started to really get into independent music. So it was great that they sort of came around on it and said, no, there's a really great community out there, and they were glad I was a part of it.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
So describe that evolution from you deciding, I'm going to be a musician. That's where my career is going.
Well, I had already been playing a lot locally, and I had just started playing in Halifax, which is about an hour's drive away from where I grew up. And I just played around the city as much as I could. And I did take a 1-year music business course while I lived in Halifax, which was really helpful for just learning how to present myself and how to design things and write press releases. It really covered all the bases. So I think that helped me, get a leg up and make what I was doing profitable, and eventually phase out my day jobs and just do music.
How did you develop your style? Was that always, did you always sing the way you do now?
No. When I started out, I was very much living in like a punk community.
Oh, really?
And I listened to a lot of pop punk. So I was playing the acoustic and I was playing my power chords, and it was a lot more driven. And I mean, emo music was huge then, so I was certainly doing emo. And then when I moved to Halifax at 18, I started doing a lot of songwriter circles. And there's a lot of folk music out of Halifax. And so that's kind of what I started to do after having lived there for 3 years. I was very much a folk pop artist. And then I moved to Windsor when I was 21, and I started amassing a record collection and listening to music I heard when I was a kid at my grandfather's house, jazz and blues and bossa nova, and I realized, this is what I want to do. So it's really changed a lot over the last 10 years.
Mm-hmm. Why did you come to Windsor?
Well, I came here on a whim because I had some money from a tax return, and I thought, I want to go somewhere. I'm going to go to Windsor, because I knew the guys from the band Mishu, and they were making really great waves, and the bar in town, Fog Lounge, had gotten an award for best music venue in Canada. So I thought, I'll go there, I'll do some co-writing and see what it's all about. And I didn't even know that it was right next to Detroit until I got off the bus downtown. And
you thought Windsor had lots of big buildings.
I was so confused. I just thought it was a massive downtown. And no, I really had my eyes opened on that trip. And I fell in love with the city. I mean, I knew I wanted to live in Ontario. Everyone I knew was going to Toronto, but I just felt like I'm from a small town. Toronto is so overwhelming, and I would be such a tiny fish. So coming to Windsor, I think I had a lot more opportunities, and the community was a lot more welcoming. And I don't think I'd still be making music if I had have gone to Toronto. I think I would be a barista or, an administrative assistant or something.
Windsor certainly has welcomed you. Windsorites really appreciate your style of music.
I feel very lucky in that regard. It's really, really a great thing, and I feel like I don't even need to travel too much to make ends meet, so I feel very lucky.
Yeah. Now, I mentioned in the introduction that you've had gigantic listeners. So tell us about that and how that felt.
Well, I was just talking with a friend about what music streaming service I should, subscribe to, because I wanted, some way to hear music. And someone recommended Spotify, and I said, I think I'm on there. So we just punched in my name to see, what was there. And my song Pretty Words had at that point racked up about 3 million listens. And I thought, what is happening? So I logged into my digital distribution website, and I saw, there's a little bit of royalties here. That's exciting. And then, the next month it was quite a lot more. And so my song had been placed in a playlist called Your Favorite Coffee House that already has 1 million subscribers. So by default, if you happen to get a song into a very popular playlist, you can expect to receive a lot of listens and a lot of new subscribers. So my song stayed in that playlist for about a year, and with the royalties, I was able to put a down payment on my first home. So a lot of people think there aren't royalties in Spotify, but 12 million really adds up.
So how much do you, per listen? Do you get paid per listen?
Yes, I think it's about 0.4 of a cent
Good grief.
So it's very little.
Yes. But 12 million adds up.
It adds up, yeah. So it worked out pretty good for
No,
me.
congratulations.
Thank you so much.
That's just terrific.
It was just a stroke of luck, really. Like, song was in the right place at the right time, and somebody decided to add it. So now I want to put out more music and try and have that same thing happen again.
Yeah. So how do you get, does somebody have to sort of put it there, or can you put it yourself?
Somebody puts it there. So Spotify themselves curates a selection of different playlists, and I'm not sure exactly who does this job. I think they try to guard those people's contact information quite closely, because otherwise lots of people like me would be saying, would you like a fruit basket? You know, is there anything I can give you?
I've got 4 more songs.
Yeah.
So have you reached your goals, or you sort of, where would you like to go? I see yourself.
That is a great question. No one has ever asked me that, but I feel like I have, because I'm not really driven for the great fame and stardom of people who can't go to the grocery store alone anymore. I feel like I just wanted to have a house and a car and be able to have a family and just have the basic things that any person working an everyday job would want to have. And I feel very lucky to have achieved that. So I feel like I have achieved my goals.
And what's it like for both of you to be doing the music together?
It's surreal. Sometimes I think this is really a wonderful thing for my daughter to see 2 musicians making it, you know, just keeping the roof over our head and doing something creative and different. And I hope that that makes her brave enough to try something different when she's, 18, 20.
Do you ever fight?
Not really. No, I don't think so. So I think we're lucky in that regard. If we do, it's just tiny little things like, why didn't you wake up sooner to make the coffee? I don't know. It's not even
nothing to do with
doesn't
music.
even matter. No.
So where can people see you, buy your music? They can buy it online?
Yeah, so I have my music on Apple Music and Spotify and all those streaming and downloading places, but CrissiCochrane.com is my hub for all things me. There's videos and music and CDs you can buy, and all of my concert listings are there as well.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
All the best of luck.
Thanks.
Thank you. And that's a wrap. Thank you to our wonderful guests, Mary Ann Mulhern and Crissi Cochrane. Thank you also to our producer, Brian Sweet, and sound video producer, Gary Glass. Grateful thanks to Tony Toldo and the Toldo Foundation, and to Neil and Tina Queering. Grateful thanks indeed. Very special thanks to you for watching. I hope you'll come back for the next episode of Scribes and Songsters. Thank you, Vanessa. I'm Veronique Mandel.